heard from Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta delivering the budget statement for the year 2023. Kweku has already made mention of some of the topical, crucial matters. Maybe the top two or the top three would be looking at government and the IMF agreeing on a debt strategy. Then, secondly, the VAT rate to be increased by 2.5 percentage points to 15%. And then when it comes to the E-levy, a reduction from 1.5% to 1%, that's a 0.5% decrement, but the threshold has been taken off, and so it's not up to 100 cedis. That means that no matter what you send, 1% will hit you. We'll be getting into some of those details, but let me bring in the Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mark Bedu-Abuaje. Mark, thank you for staying with us. What are your quick reactions on the back of the budget statement?
Is that of a mixed feeling for me?
Mixed bag, huh?
Yes, because it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. You reduce the E-levy, which of course is good.
Right.
But you find a way to increase the VAT by 2.5%, moving it to 15%.
Right.
Already, if you add all those add-ons, get fund and other things, it was 19%. Now with this too, we are getting to 21, 25%. And all this will translate into cost of doing business, and also will affect consumers as well. On the back of the macroeconomic indicators, it clearly shows a contraction in the economy. I mean, looking at the GDP of 2.5 shows a contraction. I have my doubt if we'll be able to achieve the inflation target of 18.9. And the reason being that all the factors that are causing inflation are still in existence.
Right.
The likelihood that we will have a reduction in inflation at the end of the year is not there, which means that there will be an increase in inflation, but rather in a more slower way. So
you're projecting that inflation will slow down, but it will continue to rise?
Yes, but it will be difficult for us to get the 18.5, looking at the dynamics around it, because we don't have control over the imported inflation. These are external factors that we don't have control.
Right.
I wonder what they are going to do about the other factors in terms of the cost of fuel and other things, which for me, it wasn't so clear what they are doing about it.
And it's important to state that even if, as you talk about imported inflation, there's also local inflation, which is also very high.
Exactly.
So if you put that side by side, it's quite a situation.
So, I mean, if you look at the revised budget for 2022, we were supposed to, the target was 28.5. Yeah. And we are nowhere
close to that.
Right. Or close to that particular figure, which is 40.4 as compared to 28.5. And to bring inflation from 40.4 to 18.5 requires a very deliberate measures to be able to achieve that. In periods where we have inflation above 40, it takes us an average of 2 to 3 years to get us to this level. So I'm wondering how they are going to get that. Another concern that I have had to do with the budget deficit of 7.7, and also in terms of cash terms, 61.7 billion, which is huge. This deficit is going to be financed largely locally because we are not able to go to the international market, which means that government is going to borrow from the local market through the T-bill. This will push the T-bill rate out. And the likelihood that businesses are going to be carried out of the credit market is there.
But when you talk about the T-bills, we know that in recent times, I mean, I think the last two, the previous two that were done by government, the bonds, did not perform very well. But the last one did. There was an oversubscription, which is a good thing.
It's a good thing. But what it means that once they are able to achieve that target, it means they are also starving the businesses of their credit, because most of the banks are now lending to government through the T-bills. So businesses are not getting the credit.
The problem is they are crowding out the private sector.
It's likely that they will crowd out the private sector with this budget deficit. If you look at the local production and the fact that I want to change the structure of the economy, I think the statement was too vague and too general for me, because during the president's statement, he made it clear that we are going to have further information on that. So I was expecting that this budget will at least provide further information, but it was too general for me, and that is my concern. We should not continue to pay lip service to this changing the structure bit that we have had over and over the years. I was expecting clearly what they are going to do in terms of local production for the key items that the president mentioned. If you look at poultry, rice, and other things, what are we going to do? What is the support to the businesses that are going to provide these items? In fact, Korea and Japan did a very important thing when they wanted to change their structure. They were dominantly exporters of rice. They put in place certain measures. And one of the measures was to do selective protection for certain industries. So this is that we have identified. What kind of selective protection are we doing? They did export promotion for the import exhibition industry that we are setting up. And then also direct support to businesses in terms of finance and in terms of capacity building. I wanted to see the direct support to the business that we have identified, that they have the potential to produce the things that we are importing,
right?
The toothpicks, the rice, and other things. These are things that I think I was expecting to see, but I didn't see. But generally, it gives some bit of hope. We need to also work together to ensure that the government get the necessary revenue to make sure that we are able to consolidate the fiscal space that we have. So that is my initial comment.
And those are interesting initial comments. So basically, when you look at the E-levy VAT situation, yes. Is it going to inure? People are talking about the ordinary Ghanaian, those down there. And you know that, look, on the back of what the World Bank has told us, even the Ghana Statistical Service, that a lot more people, millions of people are falling below the poverty line. What does that mean? In hiking the VAT, which is, it's obligatory. Once you go and make a purchase, exactly. There's nothing you can do about it. Maybe with the E-levy, some people have found a way around it. How is this going to work out for the poorest of the poor? And what is your reaction to the use of gold to purchase oil products? So instead of using hard currency, the dollar and all of that, we can save, but use our gold resources, which has quite a value internationally.
I think that is a brilliant idea for me.
Okay.
Because the reason why the TCD is depreciating is the fact that we are using the dollar to import almost everything. And the more the demand for it, the further the CD depreciates. So if you have an alternative to get those items in without using the dollar, because the dollar, we don't have enough, because we don't export more. So in a way, it's going to bring some stability within the foreign exchange market.
So what I just want you to hold your horses for me. I'll come back to you on that point. Let's cross over live for a press conference by some members of parliament. And Deputy Finance Minister Dr. John Kumah is addressing the press. Let's hear what he has to say.
And the new program which has been announced in this budget, which is the debt exchange program, we believe that by the end of the year, we'll be able to bring the debt of the country to sustainable level. We also want to go on aggressive revenue mobilization path. And if you heard in this budget, government is seeking to raise the VAT by 2.5%. We are also, however, bringing down the E-levy from 1.5% to 1%. And we believe that that will help us to increase our revenue mobilization, among others. The property rate tax, which has been delayed for a while, is now ready for implementation. And that is also factored in this budget. We believe that we'll be able to achieve aggressive revenue mobilization in 2023. And then also we are talking about social protection. We understand that 2022 has been a very difficult year. And so we need to provide safety nets and social protection programs for the poor. And so in this budget, government is doing two important things. We are increasing the number of beneficiaries on the LEAP program from 320,000 to 450,000. And the 45 cedis they receive every month is also going to be increased. So that is very important to support the very poor people in our community. And so the school feeding program, of course, we have heard about the challenges with payment and all that. That has also been addressed in this budget. Government is going to increase the school feeding program rate to the caterers so that we can continue with those social protection programs as far as 2023 is budget. Then we are talking also about building a local capacity for exports. Government wants to improve on our forests, and one of the key ways we want to do that is to build local capacity. We want to be able to support agricultural produce like maize, rice, soya, poultry, among other things, so that we can create capacity and also expand the economy of Ghana. These are very, very crucial pillars as far as the 2023 budget is concerned, and we strongly believe that by the time we are done with the debt exchange program and expanded the economy and open the base to also create jobs for the youth through the Youth Start program, we are going to change the economic course and difficulties that we have. So the certificate or the answer to the difficulty of how we can recover from this difficult 2022 has been provided in the 2023 budget. And there's so much hope. My sister Abena is here and she will add her voice on what the budget was about.
Thank you very much, my brother John. Yes, I think my brother has said it all. If you heard, in this budget, we are not only going about increasing our revenues, we are also cutting down our expenditure.
Excellent.
So you saw how government is setting the example. And by doing so, we also out there should do same. We are cutting down on fuel by 50%. It is not just political appointees, but across the ministries, departments, and agencies. Again, we are making sure that certain exemptions that are granted to foreign companies will be a thing of the past in 2023. All this is to reduce our expenditures. And you heard the minister talk about debt restructuring or debt operations. I just want us all to calm down and to assure you that at the end of it all, the market will correct itself and we'll be in a better position, and we will put the country on the stage for transformation. I want to assure those with T-bills that T-bills are out of the perimeter of the debt operations. It has been stated clearly. And you also heard Mr. President say that every bondholder or any other instrument apart from T-bills too, your principal will not be affected. And it has been confirmed also by the budget that your principal will not be affected. But we believe that at the end of it all, we will come up with structures and terms that will ensure that the market corrects itself and we build a robust country for ourselves. So we just want you to take heart. This budget is a unity budget, in carbon budget, where we must all come together, share the burden of this nation, and make sure that at the end of it all, it is Ghana that wins. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well,
and so that was Deputy Finance Minister Dr. John Kumah together with his other colleague who were interacting with the media. Let me come back into the studio as I take those comments that Mark Bedu-Ajman was making. So you were talking about the use of gold to pay for imported oil products.
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, it's a brilliant idea. It means that the demand for dollars to pay for those products will go down, and we see some stability within the exchange rate market. So I think we should look at other options of also getting some of the other items in without using the usual dollar that we need. And I think getting the stability within the exchange rate market is very key for all of us and for business, because it's the one of the issues that is driving the inflation, because it affects almost everything that we do in the country.
Right. So let's just hold your horses for me. Let me quickly go to my colleague, Michael Papani Ashale. He's still in Abosuokai. And of course, we know that's a spare parts dealing hub. I'd like to find out from him what exactly the reaction of the patrons there, and maybe even those who sell products there are, before we have an interaction with former Finance Minister Seth Terkper. Papani, if you can hear me, how or what has been the reaction so far on the back of the 2023 budget's reading? If you can hear me, Papani.
Most people don't really care about... Yes, I can hear you. Hello, Benjamin.
Papani, please go ahead.
Okay, great. So I mean, first of all, when I came here, nobody really was interested in what the finance minister was going to be presenting in Parliament. Most of them are busy themselves with the World Cup that is happening in Qatar, some of the matches that were being aired on TV. Many of them, their reaction to it was, well, they didn't even know, one, that such an activity was going to go on in Parliament, and two, they didn't care much about what was going to be presented. They didn't think that much was going to be said in there. But again, we heard earlier from the PRO of the Spare Parts Dealers Association right here in Abosoka, and first of all, he told me that he was going to push against any move by government to introduce new taxes or increase the already existing ones. But we'll get this reaction shortly. I have one lady here who's one of the avid members of the Spare Parts Dealers Association. She's also here in Abosoka. Brenda. Brenda, your full name though?
Brenda Adolfo.
Okay, Brenda, so you've heard partly what the minister was able to say. One of the few people that are interested, first of all, in what the minister had to say. I mean, first of all, what was your initial assessment of what the finance minister said?
Okay, so basically what is in there that is most important to us traders is the tax elements, the increments in the VAT. I think it's very insensitive to increase VAT at this time. So
well, we'll be crossing over later to Papani Ashale, but let's go to Parliament now, because the Minority Caucus led by Dr. Kasilato Force and Ranking Member is delivering an address now.
To the citizens of this country. Additional tax will simply mean that the people of Ghana is going to pay or go through an excruciating hardship going forward. Unfortunately, the adjustment that the minister announced did not show us how they intend to cut government expenditure. The things that he outlined there are nothing but empty. It will not result in where the proper expenditure cut must come from. What we can see is that the government is shifting the adjustment program to the ordinary Ghanaian, where the taxpayer will be made to pay more. Again, and most importantly, the minister in his budget speech to Parliament in paragraph 121 has successfully announced that Ghana is going to go through debt restructuring. I heard the Deputy Minister, Honorable Abena, in his statement that the only debt instrument that will not be part of the restructuring is treasury bills. This simply means that if we're a domestic debt holder, bonds is going to be affected by the debt restructuring. So 1 year bond, 2 year bond, 3 year bond, or whatever year bonds, as long as it's domestic, some form of haircut, you should expect it. The government has informed again that going forward, the external debt, Euro bonds, are going to get haircut through the debt restructuring. Term loans is going to go through a haircut. So clearly the president was not honest to the people of Ghana when he announced that there will be no haircut. The minister did not give us the estimate, in fact the budget document, in a way that we'll be able to appreciate the numbers. If you are to pick the budget statement, the appendices, and we are waiting for it, up to date we don't have it. I'm sure when we see that document, you will know the quantum of haircut in the appendices as per the interest that they will have to pay the principal. So it will show clearly what the situation is. But let me tell you, this budget is going to be a severe budget that is going to introduce extreme austerity in the year 2023. I can only urge the people of Ghana that brace up for maximum hardship, worse than what we've gone through in 1979 and 1983. That is going to happen because the budget as read today is nothing but an intensive and severe, and I repeat the word severe, hardship that they have introduced. So clearly, to the youth of this country, there's net freeze of employment, there's no hope for you, nothing more is happening. To the ordinary trader, taxes is going to go up, and to the people of Ghana, be ready that prices of goods and services is going to go up because of the increase in value-added tax, the other taxes. But you see, the minister informed us that as part of the E-levy, all the 100 cedis and the 2 cedis and the 10 cedis that you sent to your relative in the village, going forward, he's going to introduce 1% VAT E-levy on it. This simply means that the exemptions you used to get in the past, you are no longer going to get it. So, colleagues, thank you very much. Maybe if somebody has some questions, they can ask me, and then those. Okay, as I said to you, we do not have the appendices for us to estimate or calculate the impact on the ordinary Ghanaian. So until that time, we'll hold our horses. The minority is here to have a caucus meeting. Remember, these views are not my personal views. They are the views of the minority. I speak for the minority, and until the minority take a decision, I cannot impose my personal views on them. So I will wait for the minority to have a caucus position, and then at the right time, we will actually articulate our position to the people of Ghana.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Any more questions? Can I
Alrighty, so we've heard from the two sides in Parliament. The NPP, Dr. John Kumar spoke, Abner Osei-Asare also spoke, and now we've heard from Dr. Cassiel Ato-Forson. Let's interact with former Finance Minister Seth Terkper, who also joins the conversation. Mr. Terkper, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, sir, to your viewers. And
great.
Yes.
So I'd like to find out from you quite a stream of measures that have been brought to the fore. And I don't need to go over them with you because you followed every scrape of it. But I'd like to find out, the finance minister says this is an incabum budget. The NDC, the minority leader says it's an competitive budget. Where do you find yourself in assessing this budget?
Obviously, it is going to be an austerity budget. I think, let me mention also in agreement with Honorable Forson that much of the expenditure measures that were announced were on the public service expenditure, which, if you look at the items, besides the purchases of vehicles, are from goods and services. Well, we do not have the details of the budget yet. And let me say on the side that I find it strange that, the ranking member of the Finance Committee, did not have a copy of the budget. I can assure you that I would not have been permitted by the then minority now in government to present the budget.
Mr. Terkper, I'm going to beg you to do this for us. I would let you go on. My sincere apologies for the interruption. Please just give us a few minutes. Let's gauge the mood from our Sokai, where my colleague is, and we'll be coming back to you. Right, so we'll go to Parliament and have an interaction with Evans Mensah, and we'll be right back to you. Is that okay, sir?
That's okay.
All right, thank you very much. Let's cross over to Parliament. Evans Mensah is standing by there. Over to you, Evans.
The appendices to confirm this. As we speak, we don't have the appendices. They have said that they are going to remove the benchmark values. If they have removed that, then the goods that is coming in is going to go up 15% plus the 2.5% VAT. So you see 17.5% jump in the goods that are coming in from the port. That in itself will increase prices and fuel inflation. Number one. From the domestic front, if VAT goes up by 2.5%, it introduces untold hardship. And that, for me, is a significant leap in the hardship that we are going in as a country.
But is it a necessary evil?
Well, one can ask that question. But the key question is, we need to burden share. If the country is going through difficult set of situation that will require heavy measures, the first point you need to ask yourself, where does the burden of dealing with this adjustment should lie? Is it the office of the president or the government machinery that should take the hit? Is it a expenditure cut that will do the trick, or what will actually do the trick? I personally view that the adjustment, the burden of adjustment should not be shifted to the taxpayer unnecessarily. I recognize that the taxpayer must take some form of hit. I also recognize that government expenditure must actually be the one that should carry the burden majority of it.
So let's stay there, because today we saw a raft of new measures as far as cutting is concerned. So all non-critical projects must be suspended, for 2023. There shall be no printing of diaries, notepads.
For 2024, not 2023.
Okay, well, that's what the budget says.
For 2024.
Okay, 2020. Okay, I mean, notepads.
But no,
Yeah.
I'm speaking to the document.
Okay. Well,
You are saying the document is in error.
No, I haven't seen 2024. Where is it?
So there's 2023, the suspension of all critical projects.
Yeah, it must be an error. It's 2023.
2023.
We haven't done 2024
And
budget.
for the note parts, it said
When calendar says
2024.
For 2024, that's
Yes.
what it says.
So
Oh, the calendar.
the calendar
It says
printing.
2024.
Yeah. So
I read the document.
error.
I read everything.
it was an error.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's clarify that. So
But
that's
the
what that's.
budget is already in an error. But let me tell you.
No. But essentially, I just want to go through the list because some of them we haven't had before. So there shall be no printing of diaries, notepads, calendars, and other promotional merchandise for MMDAs. There shall be no hampers for 2022. Christmas is coming. No new government agency shall be established in 2023. A hiring freeze for civil and public servants. Freeze on new tax waivers for foreign companies. And review of tax exemptions for free zone mining and oil and gas companies, reduction of expenditure on appointments, including salary freezes, together with suspension of certain allowances like housing, utilities, clothing. That's good, isn't it?
So we need quantification of all of this. These are vague language, grammar. The only time you can put something on it and say that this is good or bad is when they quantify it. I think the times that we just speak freely is gone. When you say you are going to come out with a freeze on non-critical projects, what is critical and what is not critical? How much are you going, is the center going to save? We need some hard numbers to prove that what he's saying, he means it or not, so that in the course of the year, we can do proper KPIs, key performance indicators, and assessing that what they said, they mean it or they don't mean it. Until that time, this is language.
Hold on. The Deputy Finance Minister here, how do you respond to that?
Yes, let me assure my brother Ato, especially on the issue of expenditures. He knows that usually we will come with Appendix 10C listing critical projects for concessionary and non-concessionary loans. This particular budget, we didn't provide for Appendix 10C. That is almost about $2 billion of expenditures if he wants the quantification. At least if you compare that to 2022 budget, that is almost $2 billion that we are not spending in 2023. So a number of interventions that have been projected to show that we cannot do business as usual. And of course, government admit that in 2023, we must have burden sharing for everybody. Government must take a hit, citizens must take a hit, even partners, international partners, and everybody, including citizens of this country, are going to go through difficult times. That is why we included improvement in the social protection programs and safety nets for the poor. And so if you check, LEAP has gone up, not just in quantity, from 320,000, but also in the value or the amount of money we are going to pay them every month to be able to cushion them. And the school feeding program, the caterers are also going to see increment in their charges. So all these are interventions to make sure that even though we want to cut expenditures, we also want to protect the very, very poor in the society. But indeed, this budget has a lot of expenditure cuts and aggressive revenue mobilization.
But I return to Ato Forsen's question. How much are you saving from these additional cuts? Remember that the first time you announced this, I think in March, you put a 30 billion cedis.
That
you
was
hoping
the
to say discretionary spending.
Yeah, the 30% discretionary expenditure for 2022 was 30 billion.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's the question we are asking now. So all the additional ones you've just announced, how much will that save us?
Okay, so I don't have the figures with me right now because if you quantify the specifics, because there are different budget lines. If you the fuel, for instance, last year we were talking about 15 million cedis savings on fuel alone that were given for people's allowances. If you are talking about accommodation, which is given to civil servants and political appointees, that will save us about 20 million. and several others. So by the time you put all together, you'll be saving about 200 million Ghana cedis from some of these interventions. And government has also directed on the use of V8 and V6 and big cars within the center of Accra. Of course, if you are going outside Accra on project inspection or out of town, it may be reasonable to go with those vehicles. But government is deliberately cutting down on these excesses from government that people complain about.
Okay, so another question that I have to ask, that I think is relevant, non-critical projects will be suspended. How are you defining non-critical projects? Which ones are critical and which ones are not?
Yes, that's what I just spoke about, the Appendix 10C new projects that we want to start.
Can you give us some specifics so that we can hold you to?
Sometimes it's about construction of schools, construction of hospitals, construction of roads, new critical infrastructure, water projects. Some of them are very critical, but because of where we are and the difficulty of the financing situation, we are holding on until we are at sustainable levels to be able to do more.
Do you have the clarity?
No. First, as we speak, we don't even have the budget to look at the appendices he's making references to. And this is the first time I've been in this house for 14 years. This is the first time a budget has been read and we don't seem to have the budget statement or the appendices. All what I can boast of is the budget speech, which does not include the appendices. So it's very difficult for me to do serious analysis and to point to where the problems are. The Appendix 10C is talking about looking at the past. It's only an appendix that talks about wish list. That wish list must feed into the fiscal. Oftentimes it doesn't feed to the fiscal, and I've always had a fight with them. That those wish lists, I don't take them. Because if a minister says, in the course of the year we'll do this, we'll do that, it will still come to Finance Committee. So that is not what I'm talking about. My concern is the things that he's talked about and trying to say that 15 million here, 20 million there, 10 million here, it's not what will do the trick. Why are you not cutting some of your flagship programs? Why are you not reviewing some of them? You think that everything should be business as usual and the taxpayer should be the one to bear the brunt. I do not agree with that kind of adjustment.
Which flagship program would you want to see
for example,
reviewed?
We have the IPEP, Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program. We all know that it's a failure, yet government is always budgeting for it. One village, one dam, one constituency. People call it one constituency, one pothole. And then you have another one, they call the one community, one toilet. It's been a failure. Yet every year they appropriate money. We want to see what they've done with those ones. Another example, one district, one factory. They are rebranding people's factories. The center is paying for certain interest on loans that some private companies are taking. Do you think in times like this it's still feasible? We need to ask those questions. So there are a lot of things that I believe they can do. They have not been able to tackle it and show us where they are going to cut. But I can assure you, for us to be encouraged to pass any tax legislation, there's one thing we will demand from this government. If you are going to introduce a tax of, say, 1% of GDP, I would like to see a corresponding cut in expenditure worth 1% of GDP to convince me to support that program. Until I see that corresponding cut in expenditure, I'm sorry to say that I won't be part of that.
But they've announced some cuts which you just went through.
See, it is wishy-washy. It does not address the concerns that I am raising. One, what is the quantification? How much are we going to save? I need to be convinced. We deal with numbers, not just the grammar. He's the Minister of Finance, not Minister of English. He needs to show us the quantification. How much is the state going to get?
To ask you finally, this has to be approved. Is the minority side supporting the approval of the budget? Last year, you actually managed to reject a budget for the first time. Would you support this approval?
See, the reason why we in the minority agrees to be part of this budget hearing is to want to sit in, get understanding of where we are going, appreciate the depth of what they want to do, and do critical analysis. As we speak, I do not have the appendices to make an informed position and even to advise my group as the ranking on finance. So I'm handicapped. 2, the group is yet to take a decision. 3, they have announced debt restructuring in the minister's statement, paragraph 121. Debt restructuring they've announced. I need to get the appendices to track it into the appendix for me to be able to know what sort of debt restructuring they are talking about. Until I get the appendices, it's so difficult for me to make an informed position. But I can assure you, whatever decision we will make as minority, it will be in the interest of Ghana. And we'll do it today. We hope we'll get it today, and by close of today, maybe tomorrow morning, even before tomorrow morning, our official position on some of these tax handles will be made known to the public.
So that's a very important point, because you need their support to approve it.
Yes, when we work with them, we provide it for them. You should remember that they are the very same people who filed censure motion against the finance minister. And at the time he was supposed to work on the budget, he was responding to censure motion. So things obviously have delayed. It's not deliberate to deny them.
You are the deputy minister.
But you know, you have been a minister before. That technical people can do and things you must clear. So when you held him up,
are you trying to tell us that the budget as read is not ready? That's why we are here.
You are talking about the appendices being ready. Of course, it has to go to print, and these things delay. Of course,
see the soft copy. The document is not ready. If Evans, the truth is that he read a budget that is not ready.
I was talking, I was here. Relax. You have made a point, and I'm telling you why the delays. You, the same person, you were pushing him out. You didn't want him to read. And of course, we understand the difficult circumstances for the finance minister to come and read his budget. And so things have delayed in terms of the document. It's ready, it's at press, and I believe that they are going to get the document as he's talking about. He's talking about cutting flagship program. So the entire flagship program of Ghana is about 9 billion Ghana cedis. And we have cut the necessary ones that have to be cut, like NAPCO, yes, the entire, talk about all the flagship program that you are talking about. And if you are spending over 200 billion cedis in your program of expenditures, and you have just 9 billion addressing your free SHS, all the pro-poor interventions that we are talking about, then for us it's reasonable and to support the growth of the economy. But of course, we agree with them on programs like NAPCO, which has been restructured into the Youth Start program, so that we can have more sustainable job creation program for the youth. So that has been done. And on the issue of cutting expenditures, yes, a lot has been done in this budget. And I can assure you, if that is his condition for supporting the VAT, then I'm happy that he'll come along for Ghana to
provide them with the specifics they need.
We'll get
how much is this going to save, the quantified for them, you do that.
It's all provided in the budget, and there's no cause for concern at all.
Evans, to conclude on this matter, I'm very concerned that a budget will be read 1 hour after reading the budget, and still the minority, who is a major stakeholder in the approval process, does not seem to have the document. To the extent that we are handicapped in making an informed decision and to inform the people of Ghana the true state of the economy. I think that is a serious matter. I will pick it up tomorrow with the speaker on the floor, but I am saddened, and I think that is not the way it's going. This is the first time in my 14 years stay here that I've seen such a thing. It has never happened. Another one, I would have thought that the minister, when he mentioned the debt restructuring in paragraph 121, he used the word debt exchange, but it means the same.
Yes.
It means the same.
Debt restructuring.
We know.
Politically, I actually checked, and it meant the same thing.
We have been on this part for years, and he knows we have the eyes to see these things. But listen, you see, you cannot deceive us. Communicate clearly. Tell us what you intend to do, and you carry us along. Don't try to use words that will think that you are throwing dust in the eyes of us. I mean, deceive us. No. Restructuring is restructuring. What is that exchange?
Will you relax? So take your time and understand what we are talking about. I'm surprised every time my senior brother would want to go into deception and use words as if somebody has ulterior motive. That is not the truth. Yes, we said that exchange program. There's a reason for that. So take your time and understand what we are talking about before you jump to conclusion. But before that, let me address your issue of the lack of readiness of the document. In fact, I left the technical people 3 a.m. this morning. And I believe the minister himself might have left them by 4 a.m. just to go and prepare to be here this morning. And it is when we have cleared everything that they also, he knows the processes. Now has to go through binding and press and all that. So those processes have delayed. And I have explained why it is so. They, led by him, created this scenario where we are facing today. Because they censured him, he had to appear before. Of course, if you are distracted from doing your duty, it will affect the efficiency of
The
your
finance minister was distracted for finalizing the budget on time.
on time. And we all had to leave 3 a.m. this morning trying to finalize the budget. And so the
Well, that was my colleague Evans Mensah interacting with Dr. Cassia Lato Forson together with Dr. John Kumar. And there was a bit of an interaction there. So debt exchange, debt restructuring or not? Those are some of the questions on our minds. I'll just come briefly into the studio. Mr. Tekpe, just hold for us, because when I come to you, I would want a full raft of your appreciation of this. Because of a technical glitch, we'll try to go back to Evans as he interacts with them. But let me come back into the studio. So based on what you've heard, there are some problems, obviously. And again, it appears the entire motion of censure bit took away time, if we had to go by what Dr. John Kumar says. And there are some situations in there, even the printing of the full document. But what do you make of all these discussions? And what would it mean? Debt exchange, debt restructuring, what would that mean for the business community?
Well, I think they should be clear with what they want to say. Is it restructuring or exchange or whatever it is? In fact, the budget itself and appendices will give you a fair idea of whatever they want to say.
Which we don't have,
which we
are
don't
not privy
have.
to yet.
Yes. So I would have expected that they explain what they mean by debt exchange. But I think what I heard was that they are not going to touch the principals. But what about the interest? Is it going to be an extension of the duration of the debt? And how is that going to affect a debt holder and all those things? I think those things should have been, it should be clear. There shouldn't be any ambiguity surrounding some of these things, because people will interpret it differently and that will not be good for the budget itself. So I will accept that because of the challenges, we're not able to provide those documents for us to read. But I think the earlier they make it available to us, the better it will be for our discussion, because we all have to look at it, study it, and so that we're able to make informed decisions going forward.
Just to give us your final thoughts. I know you have to take leave of us because of other things you have to do. Your final thoughts on this matter before I go to Seth.
My final also had to do with the implementation of the things they have said. Because a budget just gives a fair idea of what is going to happen. To achieve the target requires that you have to do certain things, A, B, C, D. So it shouldn't be just statements. All the things that they have said that they are going to do to be able to achieve this, we should all support in doing that. I know that the VAT increment is not in the interest of even businesses and that of consumers. And for me, I'm not happy, and the business community, we are not happy about it. One thing that I also want to talk about is the E-levy. In fact, there was a reason why the threshold, the minimum threshold was there, just to support certain group of people.
Right.
The most vulnerable. Vulnerable. Are they telling us that those vulnerable people are not there? What would have been the effect of even keeping or even increasing those that threshold so that we give leeway to the vulnerable? Of course, it's going to bring some hardship to the citizens and then to the business community. I was expecting a relief for the business community, because if you continue in this tangent, what we are saying is that you are just making businesses in Ghana uncompetitive.
So in other words, there's no relief for the business community.
No, I don't really.
Budget.
Yes,
no relief.
I don't really see any relief for us, because tax is very key. And once it goes up, it affects almost everything that we are doing.
Right.
We are going to have the relief when all these targets are achievable, and now we are going to see a reduction in maybe inflation. We are going to see a reduction in policy rates. We are also going to see some stability within the foreign exchange market. And I think that for Ghanaians, let's all come together. As we keep on saying, we are not in normal times. Revenue is key, and businesses, once it's an indirect tax, you don't necessarily have an option. Once you are ready to buy a product that has a VAT component in it, you pay. But for E-levy, I think that they could have also come down from the 1%. The reason being that if they want to achieve their targets, because people have learned how to avoid E-levy over this 1 year. So if you give them an opportunity and still the rate is high, they will try and avoid it. So if it's down and for them to, accept it, and don't feel the impact of whatever they are paying on their revenue, then people will now support it. But on our side, as a Chamber of Commerce, we will try as much as possible to support this budget. What we have to do, for me, that is where my interest is, because all the things we are going through now is because of the structure of the economy. What we have to do to support those who have the potential to produce for us to consume locally and export. We have started as a Chamber of Commerce having discussion with our members who are now in the rice, members within the towels, members who are doing the water and all those things. We've all come together to ensure that we support the activities of the government.
Okay. Mark, we are very grateful that you've taken the time to join us. Again, I know you have to take leave of us, but we're grateful that you've been here with us. Mark Bedu-Agyeman is Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Let me go over Zoom now and interact with Seth Tekpe, former Finance Minister. He joins the conversation. So is this for you an Nkabom budget, or is it a, what did they even call it? A Kampedede budget? How do you find it, and what are your reactions to the claims about delays by Dr. John Kumah, Deputy Finance Minister? You would have to unmute, Mr. Tekpe. You would have to unmute.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought I did. The delays, I wouldn't buy them very much. Why? Because the key issue under consideration, remember, is the fact that we are talking about the IMF, and we have been in negotiations with the IMF for a while, so the last visit was in October, long before the censure motion came on board, and by which time, under the Public Financial Management Act, Cabinet should have approved the draft budget. And I don't think that, the censure motion had anything to do with the measures that we want, the figures, to have the budgets, ready, particularly for leadership. I started by saying that I can bet that in all my 4 years, the then minority would not, emphasis, have allowed the budget to be presented without leadership having copies. At a minimum, leadership. And by close of the speech, it is expected to be in the pigeonholes for all the MPs. I find it a bit odd that the ranking member of the Finance Committee, that is a committee to which the document has been referred, would have to wait. Certainly, it doesn't have to take the actual budget. It could take the draft, which is in print, that can be photocopied and given to leadership. And so that is the extent to which. But let us look at this in a wider context. This budget has expectations from the investors who we are going to face in the debt restructuring, expectations from the IMF itself. Of course, with the IMF, World Bank, and others, there are official channels in which they could, receive the documents for analysis. But it would be unfortunate that our MPs wouldn't have it, when no matter how important, these agencies are, our MPs, leadership, and let me stress leadership, would not have, the budget. But if it is not ready on the website, if it's not generally available, that within 24 hours, a lot of news goes around. And I hope that we do not see a repetition of the mid-year review where, because the document was deemed to be vague, there was, the commentary that followed was not positive. And I think we are where we are primarily because of, one reason, of course, not primarily as the main thing, why, we suffered, the ratings downgrades and other things that happened because of lack of confidence, in the measures. But if you permit, maybe we can, I don't know whether you want to take the lead, go through some of the specifics of the budget itself.
program, we've been told that government and the IMF have agreed on a debt strategy. And of course, we've also spoken about debt restructuring or debt exchange or whatever that means. Until we have the fine detail, we would need more insight into that. There's also the bit about VAT.
This is an example.
Right. So let me just put add two of them to that point, and then you can go full throttle on them. The other one has to do with the VAT, which has been increased by 2.5 percentage points to about 15% now. What that will mean for ordinary Ghanaians, because that one you cannot avoid. Then there's the E-levy. It's been reduced by 0.5 percentage points to 1%, but the threshold has been removed. So it means even if you send 1 pesewa, 10 pesewas, assuming you will still be hit. What is your reflection on this and what it means for us heading into 2023?
Yes, okay. First of all, on debt, 5 bullet points, 6, 7, maybe up to 10 bullet points, giving an indication of what has been agreed will not be out of place. And it's an example of what I said. If they had agreed, with the fund, the debt sustainability analysis eventually will come out in any way, because the fund, unless the authorities block it, which is difficult these days, they will put it on their website. And so if the government is not proactive, in the end, it will be available. And again, it will be sad that these things are leaked to, investors and the rest, market players, before we see it. I can only excuse that maybe there are some confidential discussions that are going on, because we have advisors, and others. But that itself could have been mentioned. And I think that, most people would have understood, considering that it is one of the major things that was holding up the negotiations, of the fund. But we know it's now official that we are in risk of debt, no risk, we are in debt distress. And I think if you listen to the minister, giving and stating that contingent liabilities, for SOEs and others are to be added, then we are coming close, probably, to the World Bank's projection, because one of the reasons the World Bank gave was the inclusion of Sino-Hydro loan and other things, the IMF, why, the IMF said our debt was likely to be 90%, and the World Bank says it's likely to be 104. So that gives you some example of, insistence, in the negotiations of where things have to lie. But we have to wait for others like arrears. What portion of the 77 billion, has been accepted to be treated as arrears? Again, as Honorable Forson said, we don't have the details. You could easily go to the appendix and it will be there. Arrears are shown. And that most likely shown as exceptional expenditure. Except this time, I do not think the fund would agree for it to be shown as a footnote, because it's quite clear. And so we need to see that as well. VAT, remember, what the increase is in itself. And I think Chamber of Commerce and the earlier commentators, with whom I was on the program, got it right. When they did not start with 12.5% as a standard rate. In substance, the VAT rate was 17.5% plus the addition, which Chamber of Commerce put at 19.5. So you are adding the 2.5. So we have crossed 20%, which is the highest, rate in the majority of countries. Ghana has crossed that threshold. Why is it so important? We do not have details, because remember the GET Fund and NHIL were taken from the base of the VAT and caused straight levies, in addition to 16 other levies. Ghana has about 18 levies. I can forward it. If we have time, I think I have it, I can show it. So all these levies are in place. But the reason it's important is that the beauty of VAT is that because it's a consumer tax, a tax on the consumer, not on business. Business are only agents for collection. If a business collects the tax from another business, it is deemed to be a tax on inputs. That's what we call the inputs, input tax, input VAT. And therefore, when the business finishes production, they are allowed and they collect the output VAT. they do not add the VAT they paid on inputs because they will be allowed to offset it against the VAT they paid on output. I hope I'm not being too technical at this stage. So what is paid is a net. So let me use figures. If I paid VAT of, let's say, 100, on my inputs, including import VAT, and I produce, of course, value addition, so I charge VAT of 120. The 100 has been collected at the port. The 100 has been collected, by my suppliers and paid to GRA. But because it's not a tax on my inputs, I'll deduct the 100 from the 120 and pay only 20, to GRA, because GRA has already got 100. That's the beauty of VAT. So if you remove, the Get Fund and the NHIL from the base, that is 5%, and say that the rate is 12.5%, when in substance, you are denying, that portion, you are denying, the input tax credit or ultimately refunds to businesses, then it was one of the factors that was increasing costs and prices and inflation. The minister has been silent on this. These are refinements which businesses have been calling for a very long time.
Right.
To streamline.
So, Seth Tekwe, we'll have enough time to dilate on these matters, much more time. But before you take leave of us, just briefly on this, we note that there were calls for a reduction in the size of government. That has not been brought to bear. But we see that when it comes to V8s and V6s, or their equivalents, it is said that there's going to be a ban on them, except for cross-country travel, and that all government vehicles will be registered with GV green number plates from January 2023. Will that do enough in terms of mitigating our cost situation? Just very briefly on that final point.
Well, I don't think so. The reason being that if you take the V8s, of course, they may be capital expenditure, but both capital expenditure and goods and services are very small. That's my first point. And therefore, just like the earlier announcements of 30% cut, which ended up to be less than 1% by the time the media review was presented, it was less than 1%, right, if you calculate it. So my reason is that since you are borrowing to finance expenditure, and compensation and interest is taking everything, the flagship and other expenditures, which is fueling the borrowing, ought to have been part of the, the details. And so if you look at the deficit, I was looking for the numbers. I believe that revenue is supposed to be 143, which itself is high. You couldn't achieve 100, you reduce it to 96, and now you want to move to 143 billion against expenditure of 205. The deficit is going up to about 50% from 37, right? So it tells you that, we are not making much impact. And remember, next year is supposed to be softer if conditions continue. And so the GDP will be probably lower in terms of its growth rate. And so I don't know how we can go through this, and achieve austerity within 3 years, especially if the fund program, lasts, 3 years. So again,
all right,
these are some of the details. Maybe we can have time to look at them when we have seen, the appendix,
right,
in particular,
right.
The full budget.
Mr. Tekwe, grateful for that apt though brief analysis, and later we'll be coming to you much later in the course of whether today, tomorrow, or in the coming days. We'll come back to you when we have more detail on the budget statement. Seth Tekwe is a former finance minister. But as we wrap our coverage today of the budget's presentation in Parliament, my colleague MFA Apau has also been out and about interacting with some traders at the Opera Square. This was prior to the presentation of the budget, and this is what those people had to share with her.
And we are live from the fire service station. That's the Tudu area, the Accra Central. You can see in the background the hustle and bustle. In spite of all the economic conditions and the hardships, people are still going about their normal duties as we also prepare for the Black Stars to take over Portugal later today. And thankfully, I have a gentleman here with me. Let me interact with him. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Joy News channel. Your name, sir?
You're welcome. My name is Emmanuel.
Let's talk about the budget 2023. You know it's happening today. What are your expectations?
Our expectation is for the government to reduce everything. How the dollar will come down, the E-levy, COVID levy, every levy on it, even including the petrol. We want the reduction of the petrol. Diesel is the cheapest thing in Ghana. Now the diesel has come there to be the highest commodity in Ghana. But we beg the government to reduce the diesel, not the petrol, the diesel.
Why just diesel?
Yes, because when the government take the reduction from the petrol, then they add it to the diesel. So we want it to be taken. Every tax on the diesel and the petrol needs to be taken away for we the masses to be free. Okay. We are suffering.
But we are hearing already that there may be an introduction of a few taxes. Are you ready for that?
It will be difficult. With this hardship, it will be difficult.
But knowing the conditions, they need to put measures in place, don't you think so?
It's up to the government to put the conditions on for us to be free.
Looking at how hard the economy is, we are looking at something like the president should come and the finance minister, he should come and tell us something to at least cushion people's mind about how things are going to be lessened. Because now when we go to the market, the price of goods are high. If you look behind me, we sell jeans here. Now the price of jeans are so high that when you mention the prices to people, they can't afford.
How much is it going for now? Jeans like what I'm wearing today, how much is it?
Initially, it used to be 60 Ghana cedis. Now, jeans like what you're wearing is costing almost about 100 and 120 Ghana cedis. So you can see that.
Why?
Yes, it's all because of the importation duties, right? And then the hike of the dollar and then the CFA. So you can you know how things are now going. Yeah, that's it. So that's how we're selling it now.
We're told there may be introduction of new taxes as we present the budget today. Are you ready for new taxes?
You see, the country that we're living in is so hard for now. That is how we're experiencing it. So the introduction of new taxes I think, is going to bring more hardship to Ghanaians than what it was before. But let's look at how the taxes will be. If we Ghanaians, we don't accept those taxes, we're going to be on the street and then demonstrate to the government that things are hard and then they should try as much as possible to lessen the hardship that we're going through.